Hi, hello, and welcome to the Passel Estate monthly wine chat. I'm Wendy, one of the owners of Passel Estate, and today I have a super special guest. This is Stéphanie Rigourd, which I hope I said correctly, a wonderfully well-known and passionate sommelier based here in Singapore. And I'll let her tell you a little bit more about her background, but she knows, obviously, the old world and the new world, which is the topic of our discussion today, intimately. She's French. She's made wine and she's served wine in France, and she's made wine and she's served wine in the New World, including our very own Margaret River, with a vintage at Xanadu, no less. So with no further ado, let me allow Stéphanie to introduce herself a little bit more and introduce what we're going to talk about today while I pour some wine.
Good idea. Hi, everyone. So yes, as you can hear, and you said it, I'm French. So I apologize in advance for my terrible French accent. I hope you will get what I'm saying. But yes, I'm not here to teach anything about anything. I'm just here to share my experience. And as a French, grown up in France and study wine in France, I had the need to go to Australia to spend a couple of months to really understand better the wines of the New World in Australia, because back in France we don't really learn wines from the New World. So yeah, that's what brought me to Australia and to do the vintage at Xanadu and Margaret River. I also did this in New Zealand to try to understand the difference. So basically, I'm just going to share about my own perception and experience.
Absolutely. And while we start, Stéphanie has brought a beautiful example from France, which we'll talk about later. But I've just poured, the two of us, a small glass of our 2017 Passel Estate Chardonnay to facilitate a little bit of discussion around the New World and obviously Australia and Western Australia, Margaret River in particular. Oh, and look, we've got some hearts already, Stéphanie, and welcome. Hi, So. Thank you for dialing in. Keep them coming. It's nice to see the likes and the comments. And of course, if you have any questions for Stéphanie, because she truly is an expert, please, now's the time to ask them and learn whatever you want to learn about all things wine, but particularly the topic today. So let's go ahead. Did you want to taste straight away, or did you want to start?
I did taste already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you wanted to start about the New World versus...
Yes, let's talk about what that means when we talk about the New World and the Old World and what it is we're trying to compare.
So basically, when we're talking about the Old World, we're talking about 100 years of experience and observation. So through these years of experience and observation, they have learned to adapt certain type of grapes to certain areas. So if in Burgundy we know that we grow only Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, it's not because we have decided to. It's just that through years they realize that these grapes are the best for that specific weather, which is a semi-continental weather, quite cold,
yes.
Could be wet as well. And then in the New World, Margaret River, less than 100 years old.
Yes, so 50 years old.
Yes.
We're very young.
So they are still experimenting. They are still getting there, but they're actually doing it very fast.
Yes.
So they don't have the same appellation system. In Europe we have got INAO, we call it. So it's based in Paris and basically define the rules all over Europe about what we can do or cannot do. So in Bourgogne, and I'm going to use Bourgogne as an example, it's because we are tasting Chardonnay today, and Burgundy whites are mainly Chardonnay. So in Bourgogne, for instance, if you decide to grow any other grape beside the grapes of Burgundy, you are not allowed to call your wines Bourgogne. It's not allowed. It's by law, it's by rules. And in the New World in Margaret River, you can grow basically whatever you want. And on your bottle, it will be written wine of Margaret River. And it means that at least 80% of the grapes
at least 80% have to be
come from Margaret River, but it could be any grapes because they are still new and they are still trying to find out which grapes is the most suitable for that terroir, soil, and weather. But I think by now they already know that.
Yeah, I think we know. It's pretty suitable, particularly for the Chardonnay and also the Cabernet Sauvignon.
For sure, for reasons that are well known, is the topography that is really similar to Bordeaux. So it makes completely sense to have Cabernet there with the strong ocean influence. The forest of gum tree, we have Les Pins in Bordeaux.
Yes.
So it makes perfect sense. There are some grapes that I don't think really make sense to be grown in Margaret River, but anyway, when you know that, you just get this wine for easygoing drinking for every day. But when you want to go for the serious stuff, you definitely move to these grapes that are more adapted to the weather and the soil, the terroir.
Which I think, so I was mentioning this to Stéphanie previously, and she corrected me on one little misunderstanding I had about something. But I find it fascinating, as Stephanie says, there are some grape varietals which do less well, arguably, in Margaret River in our climate than others, and it's interesting really because the Chardonnay does really well in Margaret River's climate, as it does in Burgundy, and yet some people would say that Pinot Noir, which is what's the best red in Burgundy, is one of those that is less. I mean, some people do make it and they make a nice drink, but it's less well attuned to our terroir, and so I find that really fascinating. And as Stephanie was saying, and yet we have a lot of common similarities with Bordeaux. I mean, that's why we can make these wonderful Cabernet Sauvignons that we do in Margaret River, and yet again. Somehow our Chardonnay also seems to be, really doing well on the world stage. And I thought it was because we had long, cool ripening and the maritime influences, and I was getting all esoteric and romantic about the idea. But Stephanie said, no, Chardonnay is really good in most places.
Yes, it's true. It's a pretty easy grape to grow. It's very strong towards disease. It grows pretty much everywhere.
Yes.
It's better in some areas than others, but it would be very interesting to try it out in Bordeaux. Why not?
Yeah. Wow, yes.
But for sure, we wouldn't grow Cabernet in Burgundy because it's simply too cold.
Yes.
I mean, it was too cold. Now with the global warming,
Yeah,
unfortunately,
yes.
things are changing.
Yes.
We
Yes.
don't know what the future will bring. I hope not too bad things.
Yes.
But for sure, Cabernet needs more warmth. And Burgundy is definitely too cold to get
Yes.
the right ripeness.
Yes.
Cabernet Franc will grow very well in Loire Valley, which is cooler than Burgundy, but Cabernet Sauvignon is a different story.
Right.
Yes.
And I guess also that's another difference when we look at Old World and New World. We tend to talk about our Cabernet Sauvignon as if it's a Bordeaux style of wine, but of course it's not a blend. Ours is 100% single varietal, as are quite a few of the Cabernet Sauvignon in Margaret River. Maybe a few have a touch of Merlot in, whereas Bordeaux is more renowned for blending.
Yes, absolutely.
Obviously within the strict rules that Stephanie was explaining.
Yeah, they can blend 5 different red grapes, but there's also a lot of history behind it. Grapes that arrived there, so of course there's the terroir behind it. These grapes have the particularity of growing pretty well and doing very well there, and it's part of the history. I won't be able to tell you why Malbec and Carmenère are there. I didn't study that topic, but I'm sure it's a strong part of the story behind it.
So it's really the history of what has done well traditionally in these climates, and then these rules to really protect the quality, I guess,
yes,
of the
absolutely.
wine. Should I pour the lovely Bordeaux that you bought, and you can talk a bit about that as well?
Burgundy, yes.
And sorry, Burgundy. Listen to me, I've already had to sip too many. And then we can perhaps taste them side by side and talk about the differences. Thank you very much. Thank you. So nice to have 2 Chardonnays. It's my favourite varietal, as many of you know. We've now got 14 hearts. This is very exciting. Come on, you lovely 14 people. Can we have some comments and some questions as well? We'd love to answer your questions. So thank you. Tell us a little bit about what you've bought.
So, you were talking about grape variety Chardonnay, but to me, it's personal. I think it doesn't make sense to speak about Chardonnay or any grape varieties, but it's maybe because I'm from the old world, and I had to adapt myself when I moved in Singapore. When I had customers from the new world, they would ask me for a glass of Chardonnay, and when I have customers from the old world, they would ask me for a glass of Chablis or Puligny-Montrachet or any appellation from Burgundy. Some of them not even knowing that it's actually made from Chardonnay. Because the reality is that talking about grape varieties doesn't make sense, because the grape variety is just one of the numerous components of the terroir. So when we are talking about Burgundy, here it's Mercurey is one of the 85 appellations of Burgundy, and all these appellations are made from the same grape variety. So it's to show that how big the variance can be just based on the terroir, basically. Yes. And you already have that in Margaret River. You have divided by sub-region with Wingup,
Williabrup and Walker. It's unofficial at the moment. Hasn't been officially adopted, but there is this unofficial subdivision, and some of the really well-known Chardonnay producers are in the Warcliffe subdivision. That would be people like Lewin Estate, for example. We're technically in Warcliffe, although the border with Williabrup is literally Ellenbrook Road, which is exactly our address, as those of you who have visited the tasting room will know. So we are Warcliffe, but we're right on the border with Williabrup, which arguably it is known with Mosswood and others for the Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yes, absolutely. And regarding this specific wine, so we're in a little town called Mercurey, so it's southern part of Burgundy in the Côte Chalonnaise. So Burgundy is divided in few sub-regions, Chablis in the north, then you drive 2 hours before reaching Dijon, where there is no wine, there is only moutarde. From Dijon onward, you have the Côte de Nuit, which is mainly known for the Grand Cru Red. Then you have the Côte de Beaune, Côte Chalonnaise, and Côte Mâconnaise. And this area is from the Côte Chalonnaise. And I choose that specific wine is because nowadays, especially in Singapore, but I would say it's worldwide, people are really focused on Côte de Nuit and Côte de Beaune. When they speak about white from Burgundy, it's always the same names coming out: Puny Montrachet, Chassagne Montrachet, Meursault. But Burgundy has much more than that to offer. So those are the most famous appellation, but there are many others. And when people complain that Burgundy tends to be too expensive, of course, if they stick only to this name, they will have expensive wine. Yes. But if you start to dig down a bit, if you are more curious and open, you can go to Côte Chalonnaise, discover this Mercurey.
It's very nice.
You also have an appellation of Givry just next to it, Reuilly, and there you will find pépite, we say in French. You will find hidden gem wineries. You will find gorgeous wine for good value for many wines. So I have got customer in Singapore telling me sometimes, I don't want second range or second kind of Burgundy wine. No, it's nothing like that. It's just a different terroir. It's just different style of wine. Yes, a Mercurey village has less potential of aging than a Puligny or Chassagne, but yet you have got many Premier Cru there that you can explore, and because there's Premier Cru in Côte Chalonnaise, no Grand Cru though. And therefore, be curious and get out of your comfort zone when it comes to Bourgogne. It has much more to offer than what you think, actually.
Well, as you just said, how many different?
85.
85. Oh, that's amazing. Wow. So 85 different recognized styles, terroirs, winemaking techniques for the same grape in broadly a similar region, similar climate. So this is yummy, and it's really interesting to me because it's not one I know. Well, I don't pretend to know very many, but it's not one I know. But it's really got that sort of full, creamy sort of.
Yeah. So this is due to the aging in new barrels. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of. We can clearly feel it's still young, and the barrel hasn't yet melted into the structure of the wine. So everything relative to barrel, to me, it's not appealing because it's not relating to the terroir. But this is still young, so it will definitely melt to the structure with time. So this creaminess is not from Mercurey. Actually, it's the aging in the barrel.
How long are they aging it? Do you know how long they're aging it in the barrel?
The Mercurey, it's 12 months.
Right. And did you say it's all new?
No, not all new. It's a small percentage. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Because ours Passel Estate is about a third new. It's French oak, of course, and it's about 10 months in barrel. But ours doesn't. Ours is and maybe because of the fruit being very fruit driven, very very well ripened in Margaret River. Maybe that's why this to me is more fruit and less of the richness that I'm tasting in yours. And would that be because of the slightly longer time in oak, as well as everything else as well? Of course.
There's also the vintage 2018.
So this is 17.
And for me, talking about aging and this process, it's not the most important, because to me, barrel, it's to the winemaker what salt is to the chef. So sometimes if you don't have any salt at all, it could be a bit bland. But if you have too much salt, you taste only salt.
Yes.
The other example that I like is when we compare barrels to makeup. So barrel is to the winemaker what makeup is to a woman. Sometimes when you have too much makeup on, it's because you have something to hide.
Yes.
I personally want to drink terroir expression in fruit. I don't want to drink the barrel or infusion of barrel.
No, you want to know where it's come from.
Here's just the right amount in both wine. It's not overtaking, and it's young, so it will really be integrated into the structure with time.
Yes, but it's still, the fruit is still very much there already for me, I think. And so,
2000. From Barry, I know this.
Hello, Barry.
17 was right after 16, as you know, and 16 was a tough year. They have been.
Hi, Mindy. Thank you for joining us. Sorry to interrupt. Just answering the question
from
Barry about the Burgundy vintages.
They have been struggling with a hailstorm, with some frost. So 16 was really hard year, and usually following a tough year, you have got bigger production, but also the vineyard is very suffering from the year before. So 17 and 18, he asked where exactly, and it's a good question to ask where, because unfortunately, it would be too easy to say that 18 was good everywhere.
Yes.
We have so many microclimates in Burgundy that is not true that everywhere it's great or everywhere it's poor and bad. And for instance, I know that in 16, some of my friends, they have vineyards in Savigny. They were very badly affected when the village just next to it had nothing.
Right.
So yes,
little pockets of.
It's not homogeneous, but generally speaking, 17 and 18 are hot weather, hot vintages. I know that Côte de Nuit in 17 did better than Côte de Nuit, Côte de Beaune, generally speaking. And I was talking with Grégory Gouge from Henri Gouge a few weeks back, and basically he said that we will need to get used to these hot kind of vintages.
Yes.
Back then, it was hard to get 12.5 percentage of alcohol in expectation when you were picking.
Trying to get in them ripe.
Now there are 14.
Wow.
So yes, it's quite hard.
And hi, Jenny and Neil as well. Thank you. It's so nice to see some familiar faces joining us and ask questions of this wonderful expert, Stéphanie Rigourd, that we have talking to us today about the wines. And that's quite interesting as well, because similar, even Margaret River, which is obviously much smaller than Burgundy, has its microclimates and its different little pockets, even within the sub-regions that you mentioned earlier. And we've had situations where, hail has destroyed a crop for one producer when literally alongside the next vineyard has been completely unharmed. For Margaret River, the 17, which is the one I poured for our Chardonnay, is actually quite a cool vintage, actually. And we've had a couple of cool vintages in a row in Margaret River, much longer ripening times to try and hit those sugar levels that Stephanie was alluding to in order to have it perfectly ripe and then a nice alcohol percentage at the end when we produce the wine. But 18, in contrast, in Margaret River is considered. Some people have said it's the most typical of the Margaret River vintages. It's back to what we would normally expect, and a very good, for want of a better word, vintage. But ultimately, I think one of the beauties of wine and terroir is that you end up the season with a harvest that nature has very significantly influenced. And as long as you're very rigorous in your farming and you're really looking after the grape growing and the canapé, and you're brave sometimes as well, you can still have an absolutely beautiful harvest and a beautiful wine, even in a more difficult vintage. But as you say, yields can be down, crops can be lost, and it's hard for some producers. So, so thank you, Barry, for that very inspired question.
Yes.
So I guess you've got the 18 here, and you're saying that it's from getting warmer, and you've got a vintage, and you've got the 17 in our Margaret, which is cooler.
And in terms of winemaking, what I have noticed with my very modest experience in both countries.
Oh, hi Ruth, and you've just bought some of our the 18 vintage.
I always feel, most of the time, that New World wine, which doesn't make sense to say New World wine because we're in the New World, but it's more polished when the old world tend to be more dirty in a way. It's completely common. I won't say normal, but quite common to have some breadths in the nose of some of the French wines.
Enjoyed more, I think, in France.
Yeah,
a lot of people think it's a fault.
Not all the winemakers will tell you it's correct. Like I grew up learning that Cornas, for instance, from the wine region where I'm from in the north of Rhône, should be breathy. But if you speak with the most renowned winemaker from there, they say no, it's faulty. So the funkiness is coming from the terroir. It shouldn't come from this yeast. So the Brettanomyces is something that you will easily find in some old world wines that you will never get, or most of the time don't get in the new world. And if they get some, it's running them nuts. They can't accept.
Yes.
So I remember I was doing a blind tasting with Glenn, that I say hi to.
From Xanadu?
Yes, and his wife. They are lovely people.
They are lovely. And they just won the trophy at the Halliday Cabernet.
Yes,
so
yes,
congratulations,
well.
Xanadu.
So I stayed with them for months. They did a blind tasting and they opened old back vintage Xanadu, maybe 10 years old. I can't recall exactly which one. But when I put my nose in, I say, oh, it smells really like Bordeaux. I really love that nose and everything. And they were smiling. They say, you see, she's French, so she likes it, but I can't take that one because it's breathy.
Wow.
Yes, so that's the difference. So what I noticed is that maybe
I like a bit of farmyard. I think it's fine.
yes,
I enjoy it.
I think it's less polished, less clean in a way. When some or most of the new word wines to me are usually polished and clean.
And that's really interesting that you should say that as well, because I always think of Bordeaux as being very polished and very correct, and you know, this sort of pinnacle of a beautifully made wine, and with all those rules that have to be followed as well. There isn't any room for much more. Whereas I think in Australia there's so much more room to experiment, room to play around with interesting blends, and to try different things to influence the end product. So,
but I simply found the winery cleaner in a way. So I'm not saying French are dirty. I know people say that, but it's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that most of the places I worked in France for the vintage, we were doing a big cleanup before the harvest started with some chemical produce and stuff. And through the process, through the harvest, the vintage, we were cleaning up only with sulfur and hot water.
right.
When in other wineries where I worked in the New World, we were repeating that process of huge cleanup with all the chemical few times through the process.
Yes. So as you say, people really are terrified of some kind of direct contamination in the vineyard. Sorry, in the winery.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So yes, we were using far more tough treatments or cleanest process during the harvest. And in France, I never seen that. So of course, I didn't work everywhere, so I don't know what are the practice everywhere. This is just based on my humble experience, and I did work in Bordeaux, Burgundy, and Rhone Valley only in France. But I work for small ones and big ones, and clearly, what I've seen in the new words were they were cleaner.
Different.
So, and I think we can feel it in the wine.
That's really interesting. I've never had anyone sort of talk about that before. So when you talk about polish, you're talking about just very clean and very pure,
yes.
I guess. Which is another reason why it's so nice, because if it's pure, then you're getting a really pure expression of that terroir and that fruit and the place.
But isn't it part of the terroir to have also sometimes this
philosophy,
the funkiness or yes. So I don't know. I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I'm just saying that this is my way of understanding things and feeling things. And I think making wine at some point in the wine career is the most important things to do. I think as long as you haven't done it at least once, you can't really understand it. And most importantly, sommeliers tend to have a huge head. It tends to be
well, they need a huge head to have all that information they have to hold in it to get qualified.
Well, but information is one thing.
Oh,
but,
hi, Jojo. Sorry to interrupt you. Hello. I'd just like to say hello to
hi, Jojo.
Yes.
Information is one thing, but experience is more important than the information.
Yes.
You can learn by heart everything you want from the books. It's not going to make you a better sommelier if you're not able to read your customer and to communicate with them and to know what is the true experience behind. I have seen so many sommeliers with amazing knowledge but very little experience, and they took the right to just give their comments on wines in front of the winemakers, and I feel very uncomfortable about it because go make wine yourself once, and trust me, you will be more humble.
Yes,
because it's so hard. It's a lot of pressure. It's many decisions to be made.
Absolutely.
So for me, the kings and queens are the winemakers. Sommeliers are just the messenger of the winemaker. We are there to bring to customer table the philosophy and the passion of the winemakers. We are little potato compared to them. We are nothing.
Well, and I was going to say as well, and I think about our lovely winemaking team, Bruce and Remy, who we're so indebted to, making such beautiful wines for us from our lovely patch of paradise. I always think terroir is such a broad, all-encompassing term, and it includes the winemaker's approach and the winemaker's philosophy.
Yes, it's a huge part of it.
That. Yes,
definitely. It's the first lesson I have got at the sommelier school. So in France, the sommelier school I did is 2 years, and the first lesson it's about the terroir, and the terroir is soil and topography, weather, and most importantly, the wine producer. And I don't even like to say winemaker, because for me we don't make wine, we produce wine. We make a watch, but we produce wine. Absolutely. Yes. So, and it's definitely a huge part, because even though you have got all these rules, for instance in France, that you have to follow and they are very strict, at the end of the day the decision you are going to make through the whole process are have a strong impact in the wine and will be directly reflected into the wine.
Yes.
I always feel and think that the wine tastes like the people behind it, just like the dog looks like his owner. Something like that.
It's funny you should say that because Remy, who works alongside Bruce up there, he's a very important part of our winemaking team, a wonderful winemaker. You've probably met him, I'm sure. Remy Guys. He always says that he thinks it's very important when you're talking about a wine. He talks about it being about people. For him, Terroir is about the people. And so it's interesting because you're the only other person I've heard.
For me, it's the most important. As a sommelier, it's my way of going. So therefore, I spend my whole career as a somm traveling through the vineyards of the world to meet wine producer.
Yes.
And I am a terrible sommelier in terms of knowledge, to be honest.
Hardly.
No, I'm not learning by heart all this stuff anymore. I have done it to get my diploma, it's done. But if you ask me to mention the 51 Grand Cru of Alsace, I forgot them long ago, and it's not interesting to me. What is interesting to me is to go in Alsace, to meet the wine producer, and to understand the terroir by being there, eating their food, feeling their weather, understanding the mentality there and the philosophy. If you get that, then you get the wine.
Yes.
You don't understand wine through books.
And look at the passion that comes through you when you talk about this as well. It's amazing. And so when you talk about that, and you mentioned food as well. So I was going to ask you: do you think the fact French diet and French culinary preferences also influence the philosophy around the wines that they've made, or maybe traditionally and historically, perhaps it has, versus some of the new world approach to their winemaking? Do you think that's relevant as well? Just how it's perceived to be part of a cuisine or part of a pairing? And where it comes from?
Well, if you are a wine producer who grew up in a wine region where the food is very rich, I don't foresee this winemaker, wine producer, making a light wine.
No,
if he's used to eat very rich food, he's going to make a very rich wine.
Yes.
So if you go to southwest of France, which is a lovely wine region in France that we don't speak about enough, you have all this massive wine like Madiran, Gaillac. For white, they have lovely Jurançon, Pacherin du Vic-Ville. Nobody speaks about this wine. It's a shame. But if you go there, the guys are playing rugby. They eat a duck confit. They have pâté, ham. You don't give them a light, elegant, crispy wine. They need their big wines. So for me, the wine of a region, it's always a reflection of the gastronomy.
I love that.
It goes together.
Yes. How
so if you go to Bourgogne, the food is always based with wine.
Yes.
So Geoffrey, when he met the menu, my husband,
who is chef owner of the lovely Gaston restaurant, where we are privileged to be listed, but it's a beautiful. Anyone in Singapore, you should have a look at it. Lovely Burgundian bistro.
So I forgot about you actually. So I was talking about my husband's restaurant because when he made the menu, we look at all the dishes and we're like, damn it, they are all based with wine. You need to find some alternative. You cannot give to customer only food that are cooked with wine.
I see. It's all cooked with wine.
Oh yes, all is cooked with wine. So the bœuf bourguignon is beef stew in red wine sauce. The egg merette is eggs poached into red wine sauce. The meunière white wine sauce.
It's all very delicious. May I just say?
Everything is wine. So you have to find some alternatives. So if you go to Bourgogne, it's rich food. Everything is based in wine. But with this rich food, they come this lovely, lively, crispy type of wine that goes perfectly because they cut through the fatness of the food to bring some balance into their pairing. Yes. But having said that, don't have escargot de Bourgogne with a round, rich white. It doesn't work. Go for aligoté. Aligoté is the perfect grape.
Another Burgundian.
Burgundy grape that we don't speak about enough because, to be completely honest, aligoté for years was disaster, was terrible. I don't know if you heard of the kir. The kir is a very traditional cocktail in France.
No. Oh, the kir?
Kir.
Yes.
So
I thought it was champagne. It was like Kir Royale.
But that was a variation of it.
Oh, okay.
But the original cocktail is from Bourgogne.
Okay.
And it's the aligoté white wine, which you put with some black currants, cassis cream, because Burgundy is also well known for beautiful and huge production of little red fruits. So they are producing beautiful cream and liqueurs of these fruits in Bourgogne. They are also known for that. So the crème de cassis is actually an appellation of Bourgogne.
I did not know that.
Cassis de Bourgogne. So the aligoté was so acidic and terrible that they were putting some cream inside, the liqueur, the black currants, and it became the kir. So for many years, aligoté was known to be the wine you put with some...
You have to sweeten with the cassis cream.
But now they are making fantastic, and one of them is Montluisan more Saint-Denis.
Yes.
I mean, it's fantastic. So if you have this very oily, rich escargot, because between you and I, escargot doesn't taste anything. If you eat the smell of
It is
Bourgogne,
garlic.
it's the garlic and the parsley, that's it.
Yes.
Don't go for heavy, round, complex Chardonnay from Bourgogne. Go for aligoté because the acidity is sharper, it's more dynamic.
Right.
It cuts through
Cuts
the
through
fat,
it.
absolutely.
Good tip. So good tip for pairing. Barry's asking interesting. You can't ask Stephanie Barry who her favourite winemaker in Burgundy is. That's not fair.
I don't have any
You're a
favorite.
winemaker in Burgundy, right? You made your.
Oh, I don't call myself winemaker. I had the chance to be given an opportunity by a dear friend of mine who is wine producer, Ludovic Belin. He's the cousin of Vincent Rappé. At the time, I was sommelier for Michelin star restaurants in the heart of Burgundy vineyards at the bottom of the Corton Hill, where Corton Charlemagne is produced. And I spent my whole time bordering winemakers. I was always with them, trying to understand what they were doing. And for me, harvest time has always been a very exciting part of the year, where I was always feeling almost sad to be stuck in the restaurant pouring wine while I was seeing all these people going for picking the grapes and working in the winery. So by going here and there every time to see what they were doing, Ludovic said, this year you can make your own wine if you want.
She did.
So yes, it gave me this huge opportunity to make my own wines with my names on the label.
Was it Le Petit Sommelier? Was that?
La cuvée de la petite sommelier.
Very nice.
Because I was only 21 at the time, and in the village of Pernon-Vergelès, which is a very tiny, small village, everyone was calling me la petite, which means the little sommelier of the restaurants down there.
Nice.
So yes, the story came from there. So I won't call myself one producer or one maker, but it has always been one of my passion. And for the future, I'm strongly thinking about it because I feel more and more comfortable in winery than in a restaurant.
How interesting. So there may be a little bit of a
yes,
career change.
Vineyards don't talk. People do.
That's true. Well,
and after
the grapes talk.
different way.
Yes.
And it could be a fantastic reconversion, and I'm thinking of for sure.
Well, that's excellent. So watch this space. Where will you? Do you have an idea?
It's a big argument with my husband because he's from Bourgogne, I'm from the Rhone Valley.
So yeah,
where we
not France, huh?
And for sure not in the next 10 years because we have other things here.
Yes.
But or working for somebody, that's for sure will be one of my dreams coming true.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wow. So there we are. So Barry, don't ask a silly question. Oh, hello, we've got some more people joined while we're talking about that. Hi, Catherine, lovely to meet you. How do winemakers balance between making wine for themselves or what the grape dictates versus what consumers want? Oh, now that's interesting because, yes, even we struggle, no, we don't struggle to what we make the wine we want to make, which is the best possible expression of our vineyard that we can at Passel Estate. But certainly if we were more commercially minded, we might do things a little bit differently in some cases. Just people's expectations. For example, our Sauvignon Blanc, we have a little bit of oak fermentation, and it's beautiful. It's a stunning wine. But there are some people who have an issue with the price point. They want something they're more used to because they're used to this very crispy sort of Marlborough style. And so that, and then you talk about ours ages a little bit, and it just gets richer with the savoury notes coming through over time. But the consumer expects to see a 20 vintage, not an 18 vintage. And so it's hard. But you answer the question from your perspective.
I think you shouldn't follow what the consumer are asking you. I mean, there are enough wine all over the world to find the wine that's suitable to your taste. It's not you to influence the taste of the wine. Yes. Because if people start doing this, it's the end of the wine. It's the death of the wine.
Yes.
We have all these beautiful terroirs, all the beautiful wine producer expressing their own philosophy and the own expression of the terroir. If you don't like a Margaret River wine, drink another wine. Don't ask Margaret River wines to change for your taste.
Absolutely.
That's the difference between well-born wine and well-made wine. Do you want to drink a wine that is made as a concept to please you, or do you want to drink the real expression of what the terroir has to offer to you? Yes. So no, I completely disagree with that. I don't like some wine producer styles, so I don't buy their wines because I personally don't like it, but I do understand why they do it, and I respect that. Yes. If I don't like it, I just drink something else. But as a sommelier on my wine list, I'm not anymore sommelier in a restaurant now, but I must have also this wine producer because I need to understand that there are people who like it.
So when you're, as a sommelier, putting together your wine list, then you're going to have the consumer in mind because you want to make sure you've got some opportunities for discovery for all your guests.
I give you an example, Meursault. back to Burgundy, Meursault, it's an appellation that is known for rounder, richer type of white wine. But for a couple of years, it becomes very trendy for the winemaker, wine producer to almost overdo it. So they were influencing the appellation of Meursault that is originally rounder and richer than Puligny or Chassagne, for instance, but by heavy batonnage, so leasing, by more barrels aging in new barrels to give more fatness, richness, and creaminess to emphasize the roundness of this wine. So for many years, it became like a trend. Meursault is even bigger than it should be, fatter than it should be. So I am not a big fan of this Meursault because I like the Meursault that are well born, not well made. And I like wines with a straight backbone, the acidity. The acidity is the life of the wine. No acidity, the wine is dead. So on my wine list, I will have the Meursault that I like from some producer that have got this sharp style. And I think Coche Durée, of course, is a must and is in this style. Rouleau is in this style. And then you have got other wine producers like Vincent Girardin, who is more on a woody, rounder style. So I must have all variation. But when a customer picks a Meursault on the wine list, it's my duty to tell him, be careful, what type of Meursault do you usually drink? And if he names the name of a wine producer that likes to produce his Meursault rounder, fattier, then I will tell him, don't take Bouzereau, because Bouzereau likes sharp Meursault. You won't like that one. So you need to have everything, and you understand that all the tests, I mean, people have different tastes and you respect that. But having said that, if you really like even bigger and woodier Meursault, then move away from Meursault. Go drink something else from somewhere else when they make this style or where they produce this style, because it's what the terroir has to offer.
Yes, and again, as a wonderful sommelier, you're able to help them make those discoveries and make these suggestions. And I think it's what Barry and I were having dinner last night in another restaurant, and we were recommended a Burgundy as well, actually, that we had not had before, by another very good sommelier. Similar thing, really sort of from what we had ordered and what we'd asked about what we were ordering, had the confidence, I guess, to say, well, Wendy and Barry, why don't you try this? And actually what he offered us was much cheaper than the one we were going to buy, but it was absolutely delicious. So, and it was a new experience for us, and it was an appellation I'm not familiar with. And so this is all the excitement of experiencing the journey of wine. And Catherine likes your answer. Thank you, Catherine. And Stepan, hi, hello. Thank you for joining us. Food travel, yes, I was really enjoying that chat as well. We're going to run out of time soon though, but I was going to ask Stephanie, when she was talking so passionately about the richness of the food of Burgundy, and she was talking about the appellation where you've got the rugby players and they're eating duck confit, and therefore they have the wine to match. Is there a personality or a character that you would associate with Margaret River in that way, a sort of culinary character, or because the wines are quite varied as well in Margaret River?
Yes, absolutely. But I see Margaret River like elegant wine of Australia. Definitely elegant wine. You could be a good picture for Margaret River.
Thank you, Stephanie.
But if you look at people I know, like Glenn of Bruno from Xanadu, or people from Lewin that I know, I don't see any big, massive rugbyman players there. I don't see arrogant people. I don't see... I see elegant people. I see...
I'll take that answer. I think that's lovely, and I do think that the wines are very elegant. And
I think they really are.
Yeah, very balanced. And they've got that structure you talk about, but beautiful. So thank you, Stefan, saying very insightful. Of course, it's Stephanie, very insightful always. We've been talking, actually, this is a record, for 38 minutes.
I speak too much, I know.
No, it's lovely. But I have been told that we shouldn't go on for too long, so we probably should think about wrapping up. Unless anybody has some more questions for us, please ask away. I think maybe we should say thank you very much, Stephanie. Really insightful, engaging discussion. I learned so much, and now I need to go back and write down all those different appellations you talked about. Actually, you have to show me how to spell them. Stefan's saying keep going. Well, is there anything else that you think we should talk about before we wrap up in this context of this? We've talked about the food pairing, we've talked about the philosophy, the winemaking, the terroir. I think, Stefan, we may have.
Unless you have another question.
Yeah, ask us a question.
But it's the first time somebody tell me keep going when I speak. Usually my husband say the complete opposite.
No, not at all. And some of our wine club members may remember that we were fortunate enough to have Stephanie host one of our early wine club events in Singapore, the Provenance Unearthed. Oh, Binoy, hello, and thank you that you love this. Do you have any questions for us? Otherwise, we're going to go, and Stefan's going to be upset. Stephanie has been not only very kind to do this live stream with us, but she has been a wonderful supporter and friend to both Barry and me, and also Passel Estate from the very first bottle of wine that we tried to sell in Singapore. And she's been wonderfully supportive. She's visited the vineyard, and as you can see, she has passion for all wonderful wines, all good winemakers. She's a friend. She's a friend of the industry, and full of so much really good information. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jo. That's very interesting too. I think that was really wonderful, and I think no questions. I think time to wrap it up and finish these lovely.
Can I have one?
Yes.
If I something personal,
please,
that
yes.
I will share with you, and I can share with all the people
Yes,
who are watching.
please,
I've
yes.
been working for 3 years on a wine documentary.
Oh wow.
Yes, that I've shot in France. I interviewed 104 wine producers, people I love the most.
Yes.
And this topic is also very interesting. So if you have questions about it, I would be happy to share the link of my documentary once it's ready. It's about organic wines. We haven't spoke about this, but it's a very wide topic. A lot of debate on it. So yes, I'm happy to share it with you. It's this kind of talk, but with wine producer and exploring this topic deeper. So
well, you should share us with your link. Maybe if you send it to me, and I can share it with
sure.
everybody.
If they're interested, if they
well,
really,
and if maybe in the future we can invite Stephanie back, and we can have another conversation about organic wine in the context of the life without wine chats.
Yeah, okay.
Be very, very, look, so absolutely people, yes please, okay, lots of people want that, so we'll book you. So look, thank you again, Stephanie, it's always
pleasure.
a pleasure.
Thanks.
And thank you everybody for joining us. We really,
Cheers.
cheers, we really appreciate it, and I'm so excited to have all this lovely wine to drink now. And have a wonderful evening, enjoy what you're drinking. None of you told us what you were drinking. I forgot to ask you. I hope you had some beautiful, lovely white Chardonnays and Burgundies and other things to keep you going. And thanks again, and we'll see you in a month's time. Bye-bye.